Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the officers and the members of the Caribbean American Political Action Committee, C-PAC, I welcome you to our annual membership luncheon event. Last year, we presented the Africans Unite Global Summit. This seminal event focused on the need for Africans on the continent and the African diaspora worldwide to unity in pursuit of our common good. This year, we will focus on the emergency in Haiti and the Haitian crisis at the US border. We will begin this forum by speaking to the rich history of the Haitian people and their many contributions to the Western world, and in fact, the world at large. Discussions will focus on the current conditions in Haiti, the historical reasons for these conditions, and their impact on the migration of Haitians in significant numbers to the US border. We will deliberate on how we, particularly Caribbean diaspora members, can assist them in their quest for a better life. This is a pursuit that, with the exception of Native Americans, is common to every American, no matter how long or deep their roots in America may be. As you all know, C-PAC is a political action committee, and as such, it is our intention to act by presenting a petition to the political leadership of Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Northern Virginia in support of the Haitian immigrants at the US border. We will ask these leaders to consider providing tangible assistance, including temporary housing, to our brothers and sisters. Now, as a reminder, this is our annual luncheon membership event. I encourage you to renew your memberships, and for those who are not yet members, do join us and help amplify the unique voices of the Caribbean. Now, we welcome our moderator, well-known immigration attorney, Jeanne Lowe, who also serves as the vice chair for our advisory board for C-PAC. Attorney Lowe, I now turn the forum over to you.
We'd first like to start off the forum by having a word of prayer by Reverend Joseph Constant. Reverend Constant, can you lead us in prayer, please?
Thank you, Attorney Lowe. Please allow me to pray first in Creole and then English. Let us pray. Bon Dieu qui plein avec grâce, ou kembe l'univers nan plamen, tant de rel petitou yo, kap riske la vie yo, pou yo vin jwen refuge nan États-Unis ak l'autre pays. Aidez-nous servir ak voix nous pour défendre besoin yo. Et puis aidez dans réintégration yo. Oh bon Dieu, tant de réel petit yo dans pays Haïti devant pauvreté, violence, discussion politique, catastrophe naturelle. Nous confier peuple haïtien en main. Vide l'esprit sous petit yo dans la Haïti ak dans diaspora pour nous mettre tête nous ensemble pour nous rêver yon Haïti qui gagne sécurité et prospérité pour tout le monde. Nous demandons bénédiction pour événement ça ak travail comité action politique Caraïbes blanc. Nous prions dans nos bon Dieu, qui est créateur, rédempteur, et gardien, et puis dans nos Jésus-Christ. Gracious God, you hold the universe in the palm of your hands. Hear the cries of your children who are risking their lives to find refuge in the United States and other nations. Help us to use our voices to advocate for their needs and to help in their resettlement. Oh God, hear the cries of your children in Haiti in the face of poverty, violence, political strife, natural disasters. We entrust the people of Haiti to your care. Pour your spirit upon your children in Haiti and in the diaspora, so we can come together and dream of a safe and prosperous Haiti. We ask for your blessings upon this event and the work of the Caribbean Political Action Committee, we pray in the name of the God who is creator, redeemer, and sustainer, and in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. As Dr. Downer said, my name is Jay Lowe. I am the Vice Chair of C-PAC's Advisory Board. I'm also an attorney, immigration attorney, practicing in the Washington metropolitan area for over 27 years now. And I am indeed honored to be the moderator for this event and with this august panel. I'd like to start by introducing the panelists. We have here with us this evening Ambassador Curtis Ward, an attorney at law and former ambassador and deputy permanent representative of Jamaica to the United Nations, with special responsibility for Security Council affairs, serving on the UN Security Council. Next, we have Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Thelma Philip Brown, serving as ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis to the United States. While not here as representing her country, she speaks on her own behalf as a daughter of the Caribbean and a student of history. Reverend Joseph Constant serves as rector of St. John's Episcopal Church in Beltsville, Maryland. He has a large international congregation that comprises of Caribbean nationals. Reverend Constant, who is a Haitian national, established the Micro Project Incorporated, a nonprofit organization committed to serving the needs of orphans and at-risk children in Haiti, working directly with and through Haitians to provide desperately needed service since its inception in 2005. Rounding up our panelists is Dr. Alex Desolme. Dr. Desolme is president of National Haitian Elected Officials Network. He serves as a North Miami-Dade councilman representing District 4. He also serves as vice mayor. Dr. Desolme is an Haitian indigene as well, working to resolve the issues of his Haitian constituents. And he brings a wealth of information on the particular crisis that exists. They're your panelists. And so our opening discussion will center on Haiti's contribution to the Western Hemisphere and the world. And so I will field my first question to Dr. Desolme, but this question afterwards, I'd like each person in this order, Ambassador Philip Brown, Reverend Constant, and Ambassador Ward, to also address this question. Can you give us a historical perspective of what Haiti means to the Americans, to the Americas, and specifically, what was unique and inspirational about events in Saint-Domingue, which is Haiti, from 1791 to 1804?
Thank you so much, Attorney Lowe, and to my esteemed panelists. I want to say I am truly honored to be here with you guys this afternoon. From 1791 to 1804, Haiti was considered as the pearl of the Atlas, which shared the island of Saint-Domingue, which is now known as Dominican Republic and Haiti. Haiti, as we all know, they enslaved us from Africa, mostly from the western part of Africa. And the slaves that was dropped off in Haiti created a patois, as we now know as Creole, Haitian Creole, which was not an official language. They spoke this language in order to communicate with one another, in order to defeat this well-funded army that was well backed by then the France, Napoleon, who organized the slave trade from all over the country. We were successful. We defeated this well-funded army with what? We didn't have weapons. We didn't have all of the big stuff. But because of the intellect of our smartness from where we came from, we were able to communicate using different strategies, different location, knowing when the French army was coming. We were able to be the first republic in 1804 of the entire Western Hemisphere. And that is the story of the beautiful island where I was from, Haiti. And it means so much to so many people. But to us as Blacks in America, and I as a Haitian American, we know that we have a president, Barack Obama as president. A lot of us are where we are because of those slaves who are enslaved, because we didn't choose to be here, to come to America and did this wonderful feat. So that's what Haiti means to a lot of us Haitian American. This pride of who we are is the resiliency, fighting, not having much, but be able to do what we can with the very little and be successful at it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Dasome. Ambassador Philip Brown.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon to all my esteemed panelists and the listening audience here. Let me first enunciate a quote by the late Prime Minister Sir Eric Williams of Trinidad and Tobago, who describes the Haitian Revolution thus: as an unprecedented feat by which a horde of degraded and vilified beings, who in the planter's view passed for men only in the catalogue, were fashioned into an army which humbled the flower of British, French, and Spanish militarism. And I go to another famous Trinidadian artist by the name of David Rudder, who once sang an epic song, the chorus of which states, "Haiti, I'm sorry, we misunderstood you. One day we'll turn our heads and look inside you. Haiti, I'm sorry, sorry. One day we'll turn our heads and restore your glory." So I thank C-PAC for this opportunity to turn our heads and look inside Haiti. For in the decade of Africa and its descendants, as declared by the United Nations in 2015, it's imperative that all of our peoples, including Haitians, not just look inside Haiti, but look inside ourselves to ensure that our history is no longer misunderstood. But understanding the events in the former French colony, as Dr. Alex said, is an educational process. So I want to leave you here, or start and leave you with the vowels A-E-I-O-U, because Haiti, as Doctor said, we owe you. The Caribbean owes you. The world owes you. And what do we owe you? A, an awareness and acknowledgement of the, and an acknowledgement of and advocacy for the enormity and exceptional nature of the enterprise of a successful revolution. As Doctor says, these people came from all over Africa, spoke different languages, different cultures, and had to bind themselves into a group, an army that took on the French, the Spanish, and the English. The importance and impact on the entire Americas, the inspiration it could have been to people of color all over, and the opportunities, it could have provided were it not for the obstacles in its path. And we could talk later about the opportunities and the obstacles. And finally, what upliftment, financial, social, and psychological, the events in Saint-Domingue could have been and still can be afforded people of color everywhere in an era when racial injustice is brought to the fore, simply by an understanding of the uniqueness of this event in history. And so I close my opening with this African proverb: until the lion tells his story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. We can't begin to tell the entire history of what happened between 1791 and 1804 and beyond. No, but we can whet your appetite so you can go and read for yourself and understand the importance of these decades. it is time for us not just to look inside ourselves or in Haiti, but to unveil and tell our own stories in our own context by our own voices. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. Reverend Conson. You're muted. Can you unmute?
Thank you, Ambassador Lowe. Greetings, fellow panelists, and thank you to all of you for attending this event. As I reflect on the events leading to the Haitian Revolution, I can think of two words. I'm thinking of faith, and I am thinking of inspiration. I am thinking of faith because I can imagine our brothers and sisters, our enslaved brothers and sisters, praying prayers of lament, praying prayers of how long torture, how long inhuman treatment, how long. They envision, through their prayers, they grabbed a hold of a vision, and the vision was freedom and liberation. And they never lost track of the importance of faith. They never lost track of the importance of worship. And they came together. And I want to emphasize here, they came together. Once they grabbed a hold of God's vision for their lives, a vision of freedom and liberation, they came together and they worshiped and they mapped out a plan for how they're gonna act on implementing their vision. And it is inspiration. Inspiration to enslaved Blacks all over the Americas, and inspiration, and it must be inspiration to us today for Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ambassador Lowe.
Ambassador. Ambassador Ward, you're up. You're also muted. Can you unmute, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to participate in this forum on Haiti and to provide my perceptions of some of the problems and some of the solutions. I believe, in answer to your question, however, a lot has already been said by the three panelists that preceded me. And we know that the history of Haiti has been a complex one, but as the other panelists have said, Haiti was a beacon of freedom. And we should never forget that, and we should honor that. And that's one of the reasons why our responsibility of people of color in particular, that we honor the history of Haiti and ensure that we do whatever we can, that Haiti can fulfill its dreams for the people of Haiti. So I don't want to belabor this point much because a lot has already been said, and I endorse wholeheartedly what the other three panelists have said.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador Philip Brown, I'm coming back to you because you mentioned that there was more. And I want to ask you, what were the obstacles to progress and development of the peoples of Haiti following the revolution? Unmute, please, unmute.
Sorry. Yes, so there would have been many, both internal and external. And I don't want to pretend that I know that much about the history, but what I want to focus on one thing, the fact that Haiti had to pay between 1825 and finally up until 1747, Haiti had to pay France 150 million francs for the loss of, purportedly, for the loss of property that the planters suffered. That's unheard of. Imagine if after the American Revolution, America was asked to repay Britain. So they had to repay this sum, a tremendous burden on them. They had to borrow from French banks and from American banks to repay this, did not repay it in 1947. And if you look at it, in spite of what else may have gone on, suppose they were able to invest that money in the country. Suppose they were able to develop the extractive industry. They have gold and copper and bauxite. Suppose they were able to do that. Suppose they were able to build out an education system. Right now, about 50% of the children in Haiti don't have access to ready access to education. Suppose they were able to build the health system through development that could have gone into infrastructure, not just for Haiti, because the thing is that lots of persons from the other countries sought refuge in Haiti. So that could have been a virtual little Singapore if they were able to invest that monies, but instead the world stood by while Haiti had this onerous task of paying France because they sought their own freedom. Totally different to what happened in the United States. And in fact, in the Caribbean, Britain paid the planters. But here is it, that this Black country, they fought and won their freedom, and the world stands by when they have to pay France 150 million francs at the time, but billions of dollars now. So that's, I think, is a major obstacle to their progress, which they have never really been able to overcome.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to chime in or add to that?
Real quick, Attorney Lowe, I just wanted to bring into perspective, and I think Ambassador Philip Brown mentioned it very well, but the Louisiana Purchase, which occurred in 1804, which actually doubled the size of the US, is the reason why a lot of these things happened, because the French had owned a little part of the Americas, and because of the revolt that happened in Haiti during that same period of time, the French, they could not negotiate. So, President, back then when we have George Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, and Treaty Secretary James Madison, they could not negotiate it. So as a result, because these Black slaves that was enslaved, and if you listen to what's happening now, and we're going to bring it back to 360, the expulsion, because that's what happened in Africa. We were taken from a country we did not want to be taken from, and then now we are here. Because the French did not put down Haiti, did not, enslave, finish this country, Napoleon Bonaparte decided that they could not continue to be part of the U.S. So close to the U.S. To the U.S. what it is today. So that's why the Louisiana Purchase happened. So Haiti has been an integral part because of us, because of who we are. A lot has happened. So I just wanted to put that into perspective.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other contribution? If not, we'll go on to the next question. Now, we're now at the point where we understand all that has been happening at the border. And that is really the reason why we have decided to convene, because what is happening is downright atrocious. We wanted to give a perspective for people to understand what the Haitians are about, what the revolution meant to all of us as Black people, as diasporans, and even here in the United States, for us to understand that because of what Haiti did, we can say, and we can look at pride with the fact that we stood up, they rose up and fought one of the best armies in the world. Remember, this is Napoleon. I mean, it is just absolutely incredible. But now we're seeing the disrespect again, all over again. And so the recent response by the United States to the Haitian refugees crossing the US-Mexico border drew lots of criticism and surprised many that the Biden-Harris administration would have responded the way they did. What would be the more humane response, Ambassador Ward, given that, for instance, Cubans are allowed to come in and Haitians not?
First of all, let me just say that what we saw occurring on the US border with the Haitian refugees was disgraceful. It was the type of response to refugees that we would not expect any civilized society to condone. Most of all, we should not have expected this type of behavior from the Customs and Border Protection Agency under a Biden-Harris administration. Having said that, the immediate deportation of thousands of Haitians is also wrong. It's inhumane. Every Haitian who crossed the border from Mexico or land in the United States by sea should be given the opportunity to apply for refugee status in the United States. There should be no deportation of Haitians. But having already deported thousands of Haitians, the Biden-Harris administration has a responsibility not to provide mere humanitarian assistance. That was being provided by UN agencies in Haiti, but they are in need of more resources. But what the Biden administration ought to do with those Haitians that they have returned is to provide economic opportunities where they can have a living wage, where they can resettle in a country which many of them have left before. That is the minimum requirement by the US in terms of those that have been returned. And any future Haitians crossing into the United States must be given the opportunity to apply for refugee status. And Madam Chair, as an immigration law, you understand full well that refugee status should be accorded to people who flee these kinds of disastrous and perilous type of situations. Going back to Haiti in a society which is racked by crime, political instability, and other human security deficiencies is not an option. And therefore, the Biden administration must, without delay, have a policy on Haiti that determines what they will do. And they should also increase the number of permanent residences that are available on a humanitarian basis to refugees once they qualify, and not having to wait years in line to get permanent residency in the United States.
Thank you. In doing the research and reading up for this forum, even as an immigration lawyer, I was just absolutely horrified at the numbers. Listen to this. Last year, only 22% of Haitian asylum applications were approved in Mexico because you know the policy of sending them back to Mexico. However, 98% of Venezuelans, 85% of Hondurans, 83% of Salvadorians, and 44% of Cubans were accepted. And when we look at the numbers, only 4.62% of Haitian asylum seekers were granted asylum, the lowest rate among 84 national groups. So, I mean, it is absolutely disgraceful. And I mean, there's no other way to color it. I mean, it's there. The numbers speak for itself. And so, you know, I would like to open up, if you have anything else to say, the other panelists, because this is something like Dr. Dasami, in your role as president of the National Haitian Elected Officials Network, I understand that you are in communication with the US at the highest level. What can you tell us about the approach you're taking or what's happening?
Yes, and I want to thank you because those figures are certainly stunning to people who hearing it the first time. So I think Ambassador Ward was right on, but here's the issue. They're not even allowing us, and we're not going to sugarcoat it, it's because we're Black. That's exactly what it is. An opportunity to even heard, which is the law of the country. So the US has a policy that says that if you make it on near ground, you are supposed to get a due process. So you are, I know, Attorney Lowe, you know, as the due process where you get an immigration judge who will determine your case. So they're not doing that. So that's why these people are not deported. So they are being expelled to Haiti. So the mass exploration that's happening in Haiti, meaning that they are just taking you because you are Black. They took everybody, they round them up that was under the bridge and send them back to Haiti. So that's why you have some folks who are not born in Haiti, who are in Haiti right now. So we got some brothers and sisters from other part of the world that was happened to be there. They didn't even ask them what's the name, what they are. They just expel them back to Haiti. So deportation is when you do come in, they allow you to say a few words or whatever the case is, and then you get deported back to where you came from. These people never came from Haiti. They came from everywhere in South America, and they have been on this journey for it's a 4,000 mile journey. Some of them died along the way. Without their family, kids, et cetera, et cetera. But as of now, to answer the question real quick, 8,500 of those already been repatriated back in Haiti. That means that they already been sent back. The few that are left to their family, all of them have court dates, and there's challenges there too. And that's why we want to thank C-PAC and everyone within the Caribbean community for standing up, because when you look at it, it's only us, people who look like us, who's really talking about this issue, because it's not a popular political polling issue. Immigration is not, and when they do, they don't look at it as a Black issue. With the Cuban Act, they have a wet foot, dry foot that was installed in 1966, which says that if you are Cuban, and which is fine, we love our brothers and sisters from Cuba. If you come here and you touch the ground, you are automatically allowed to stay in the country and you are on path to citizenship. We said, that's fine, but we should let other folks do the same. And as they talk about COVID, because they use Title 42 to adjust what's happening under the bridge, well, that's fine too, but our brothers and sisters from Afghanistan are being floated into coming here. About 32,000 of them were there, are in our state. So speaking to the White House, speaking to folks from the Department of Homeland Security, which is DHS, this is something that's normal. And I think numbers don't lie. Black immigrants, right behind Haitian, I think, which is the last level, is folks from the western part of Africa, where some of my DNA are from Cameroon. So they are the worst treated group of immigrants, and then it's us Haitians, and then on and on. And those numbers are very, very much in detail. So,
okay, it's really a sad situation. But Ambassador Ward, how do you see the US's role in Haiti? I mean, currently at this time.
Well, I just want to comment a little bit on what Dr. Alex just said, because we cannot ignore the fact that racism plays a part in the way the Haitian refugees are treated. And we thought we had gotten beyond the xenophobia and the whole anti-immigrant policies of the Trump administration when we elected Biden and Harris. And therefore, we expect to effect immediate change in how immigrants are treated in this country. But to get back to your point that you just asked me, the US has had a long and sometimes sordid role in Haiti. But there's an anomaly. Haitians, when you speak with Haitians, you will hear blame being leveled against the United States for having interfered in the internal affairs of Haiti and having dictated terms on how Haiti should conduct itself, oftentimes propping up corrupt and inept political leaders in Haiti only because they willingly do the bidding of the United States. At the same time, when a natural disaster hits, the United States, with its resources, is the first to respond. And that is expected. But there is an anomaly because Haitians themselves will call on the United States for help. But at the same time, the US has a tendency of going in and staying too long. So the role of the United States going forward must be to bring relief to the Haitian people. And when I look at the recent programs that were announced for the countries of Central America, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, based on their population of approximately 17 million, they are being offered $4 billion in assistance, in addition to the hundreds of millions that were already programmed and being spent in the Northern Triangle countries. Haiti, with 11.5 million, should be receiving at least $2.7 billion in US assistance. We need to see not only that level of economic assistance, but assistance, free trade to ensure that agricultural and manufacturing products from Haiti can come to the United States. We want to see the Overseas Private Investment Corporation guaranteeing US investments in Haiti. So there are a number of things the US can do. And we, as Caribbean people, must be advocates for Haiti. And I want to say this, Caribbean governments with a high profile on the international scene must also be advocates for Haiti and not just advocates for themselves.
Thank you. I actually even wanted to opine on that because in the Caribbean, our countries themselves are not welcoming the Haitians. And so I wanted to field a question. I mean, should Haiti be in a Caribbean country and a member of CARICOM look or expect assistance from Caribbean governments? I mean, how do we as a Caribbean nation, the whole group, come together in terms of helping Haiti?
If I may just jump in, since my mic was still on. Caribbean countries have great difficulty in accepting more people into their labor force. I'm not making excuses for them, okay? Because the unemployment rate in most Caribbean countries are in the double digits, as it is. We have had in the past where Haitians have landed, say, in Jamaica, for instance, and there are ways to get assistance to deal with them, but only on a temporary basis. A Haitian given temporary refuge, say in Jamaica or anywhere else in Caribbean, should have the option of, from that position, applying to the United States for refugee status. We are not seeing that happening. So that is one of the options. But also bear in mind that Caribbean governments, especially CARICOM members, can boast of stable democracies, strong law and order, rule of law institutions. So they can offer to Haiti those kinds of technical capacity building assistance. And I know they have done this, but oftentimes Haiti turned their back on these offers and looked instead to the United States and Canada. And then when that fails, there is another story.
Reverend Constant, I wanted to ask you, why do you think that there's not more outrage in the African diaspora about what is happening with the Haitians generally?
Thank you, Ambassador. I think
I'm
there's
attorney. I'm attorney.
thank you.
I have yet to be an ambassador. I will be one though.
Thank you. And I do want to thank Ambassador Ward for his remarks as well. Thank you, Attorney Law. No, I think there is outrage. I think there's outrage, and we certainly demonstrated in so many, in different ways, perhaps not the ways that others would expect us to. There's a pattern. There's a pattern going on in the way Haitians are talked about, even in this nation, by the highest elected officials. There's a pattern. There's a pattern to demean Haitians. There's a pattern to treat Haitians the way we have been treated at the border. There's a pattern. And the pattern also leads us to where we are right now in Haiti. You talk about the role of the United States in Haiti. There's a pattern. We Haitians living outside of Haiti, we grieve. We grieve for what's going on at the border. We grieve for what's going on in Haiti right now. But the thing is, Attorney Law, my focus is on how do we Haitians come together and claim Haiti as our own. We have done it before. We can do it again.
Yes.
As much as I'm interested in what the United States is doing in Haiti, in what France is doing in Haiti, in what Canada and others are doing in Haiti, but my focus has been on what we Haitians must do to move forward as a people. We are a great people. I was born and raised in Haiti, and as a Haitian, I claim that God created me in God's own image. And so as Haitians, we must claim that we are a great people. And we must not allow anyone to make us feel less than or diminish our greatness. That's where I want to focus, Ambassador. Attorney Law, I want to call you Ambassador.
I'll accept.
That's where I want to focus my energy. And so I know a lot of my brothers and sisters living in the diaspora and others from the Caribbean who are also crying out and are also helping in more ways than one. And so we are definitely grieving and we are crying out.
Okay. Would you like to speak to that, Dr. Zolman?
Yes, Attorney Lowe, and I would concur. We are very outraged. But one of the goals, and I think Ambassador Ward mentioned that we do not, accept the help from our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. Yeah, that does look like it's true, but I think Ambassador Ray Joseph in the chat mentioned something that's very important. When you have folks that is involved in the daily life of your folks, And from 1915 to 1934, 19 years, the US occupied Haiti, where they changed the constitution of Haiti. So you have a country that's been so into turmoil that depends heavily on the US. And the US happens to be the big person around the world. Even in this particular situation, what happened in Del Rio? Why would you think the prime minister of Haiti would say they would allow that they could accept these migrants that are being exposed to Haiti? And you and I and everybody in the world know Haiti cannot do that. And when I spoke to Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas of the United States Department of Homeland Security, he mentioned that to me. And I knew that was coming. So when you hear these type of things, which is accurate, what Ambassador Ward mentioned, you started to think, well, would my brothers and sisters would really don't want my help? Of course not. Of course we would appreciate the help. But there are some actors, and Ambassador Joseph mentioned it, the daily lives of Haiti. The US is in other countries, France and in Canada. The US is probably the main actor, but there's other actors in there that kind of direct all these things that's happening.
Okay.
May I?
Yes, you may.
Yes, thank you. I would like to support Reverend Constant in the idea that we must look within ourselves as a people. In this decade of Afro descendants, we must look within ourselves. And Dr. Alex mentioned, these things take place because we are Black. And sure, that's goes back, as I like to look at root causes. Way back in the 14th century, when Linnaeus classified humans in categories, have Homo Europeans as the top and Homo Africanus at the bottom. And even the church allowed that to obtain, because this was a way of justifying enslavement. These were less than. And Dr. de Grey wrote a book, Post-Traumatic Slavery Syndrome, that we ourselves seem to have bought the Kool-Aid and look down on ourselves. And it's time for us to see ourselves for who we are and who we were created to be. And that's what Dr. Constantine is talking about, made in the image of God. Civilization began in Africa. And so we have to lift us up as a people again and look for solutions within ourselves. Yes, I agree. Look, I mean, and Dr. Alex spoke about the Louisiana Purchase. I mean, here, Louisiana Purchase, it was not just Louisiana. It's land that starts from the Gulf way back to Canadian border and even over into Canada, double the size of the United States. Imagine if the Haitians had not defeated the French and Napoleon, so the US goes to Napoleon with the intention of purchasing New Orleans and comes away with all that expanse of land that's responsible for 13 colonies now. Imagine if they had not had that. So what Haiti means to the development of the economy of the United States. And so these are things that we must look at, and the history has to be told because the root has to go. You are responsible for that. We did that, Blacks did that. We're not less than. We were created equally, but we have to look within ourselves for solutions. And in terms of, I'm not gonna get political, but I was just reflecting that in the Eastern Caribbean, my parents met and married in Santo Domingo, the other part of Haiti. And what happened? People those days, they went to Santo Domingo to cut cane, they went to Curacao, if there was jobs in the oil industry, they went to St. Croix, Guyanese came to St. Kitts and Nevis to cut cane. So there is this history of migrant workers, and I'm wondering, since there is now such a shortage of workers, and I don't know if Dr. Ambassador Ward could speak to that, could there be some mechanism whereby wherever they are, Black or brown workers can be given some temporary migrant working status? They used to be bonded in St. Croix. If that can help to alleviate the labor shortages, and at the same time, because it's not everybody who wants to come to the US and live forever. Most people just want to make a living, even if it's for 6 months. I'm just wondering if this is something, Ambassador Ward, you think that, you know, may be helpful, and Dr. Alex as well. But as I said, but I go back to the point, we have to be confident in ourselves, who we are. And if we don't understand our history, if we don't know where we came from, we can't appreciate who we are, and we don't understand where we're going. So all of us, and I'm concerned with the education system in Haiti as well. And because if 4 out of 5 schools are private schools, you know, you wonder, are they understanding their history as a people? So they know where they came from, understand, appreciate who they are, and can reach their full God-given potential, and stay at home and create, just as they did in the revolution, banded together, as you said, they came together and were of one accord, and they were all able to overcome because of that unity of spirit and purpose.
Excellent. I noticed, I'm not sure if I'm looking at it properly, but I'm not noticing any questions. I'd like you to put in your questions in the Q&A, and we will answer them at the end of our forum, our discussions. So I'm calling on all the listening audience, or the viewing audience rather, to please put in your questions in the Q&A so that we can ask different questions of our panelists. I know you called, you said, I don't know if you have anything to opine on, Ambassador Ward. Well, she asked to call on you.
I have to respond since I was asked. No, but I'm not sure what is the status of the temporary labor situation with Haitians and the United States, because other Caribbean countries, I know Jamaica in particular, send thousands of temporary workers, seasonal workers, actually, in the agricultural sector and in the hospitality industry as well, yes, every year to the United States. And that has been going on for decades and working very well. And it does relieve the pressure on the oversized labor force in countries like Jamaica, and I'm sure it would work well for Haiti. I am aware that there are many Haitians who work in the poultry industry in the eastern shore of Maryland. I'm not sure whether they are temporary workers or otherwise. But we must understand that, as Ambassador Philip Brown just mentioned, that the United States has a labor shortage. And it's okay for one thing to bring people from Central America and Mexico to work in the Western states' agricultural areas. But the entire East Coast is suffering from a labor shortage at the moment, and Haitians can fill those jobs. But again, I want to get back to, I also want to pick up where Ambassador Philip Brown mentioned that a deficiency in the education system. And I think that is critical, and that is one of the areas. And when I speak of human security, I'm talking about the total elements that humans require to live a decent life. They must have equal access to affordable and quality health care.
Yes.
Access to quality universal education, regardless of social and economic status.
Yes.
Access to food and shelter. Yes. In other words, freedom from want. Access to a justice system that serves all of the people equally and without bias. they must also be able to enjoy safety and physical security from violent and criminal elements. Now, all Caribbean countries have issues, but some are much greater than others. But in Haiti, it is debilitating. It is reducing a society where Haitians, not because they want to leave the country, but when you couple the lack of human security with natural disasters, inept, corrupt governments, people want to leave, not because this is their first choice. If you can create an environment at home for people, they will want to stay. People only leave when conditions get really bad. If conditions are normal, they don't flee. So we must understand, when I speak of $2 to $3 billion in investment in the Haitian economy, these are the issues that must be dealt with. And the US has an obligation to do it, rather than to just put up a fence on the Mexican border. They have now decided to spend $4 billion in the Northern Triangle. What about Haiti? And again, as I mentioned earlier, with Haiti's population versus the population of the Northern Triangle countries, Haiti should be getting at least $2.7 billion in assistance. So there is a lot that needs to be done. But unless they address the issues of human security in all those areas that I mentioned, Haitians will be forced to leave, not because they want to leave. And I noticed in the chat room where former Ambassador Raymond Joseph said that the US policy towards Haiti has been disastrous. We have an opportunity to encourage the Biden-Harris administration to change that policy. We need a paradigm shift in US policy towards Haiti. And I'm sure there are willing Haitians at home in Haiti and in the Haitian diaspora that can help to advance a policy that will benefit the people of Haiti in the short, medium, and long term.
Excellent, excellent. Reverend Constant, as a man of the cloth, I wanted to ask you, what role can faith communities play in the refugee resettlement and the issues going on right now?
Thank you. Yes, as a leader of a faith community, I firmly believe we are called to a work of radical welcome. Radical welcome. Again, my heart grieves. My heart grieves at the inhuman treatment of our Haitian brothers and sisters crossing the border via Mexico into Texas. And we know that this is something that is live, it's gonna continue, and we must be prepared. We have to do our part in teaching about refugee resettlement. We must advocate and inspire the local community to act in support of refugees and immigrants. And so I am grateful to C-PAC for your willingness to lead this effort in the greater DC metropolitan area on behalf of Haitian migrants. Yes, the faith community must do our part because again, we certainly believe that we are called to a mission of radical welcome. And therefore it is part of our mission to offer refuge to those who are in need. And so I firmly believe that we have our role to play as well.
Thank you. There's a gentleman by the name of Alpha Gibbs who has a question. We're gonna intersperse questions now. Can you ask your question, please? Daniel, you were to unmute his mic. Hello? Okay, let us, in the meantime, does anybody else want to opine on what Reverend Constance said.
Yes, and I want to just chime in with, I think I want to echo both what Ambassador Ward said, all of the panelists, Reverend Constant, as well as Ambassador Philip Brown. Divide and conquer is one of the strongest part of this whole equation, and they putting us brown people, and that's why I do thank C-PAC for the courage when I got the call of I didn't think I was hearing right to do this. Because when I go and vote and I get turned around because I'm Black, that's an all Black issue. When I get stopped and almost being killed because I'm Black, that's a Black issue. But however, when it is some migrant that trying to get to this country for a better life, like anybody else is trying to get, it becomes just Haitian issue. And I think they have put that where they divide our community in terms of, what's a Haitian issue, or what's a Black issue, or what's a migrant issue. So I do say there's no Haitian, especially my mother right now, despite the kidnapping, what's going on in Haiti, which we all are saddened by what's happening to see your country. Every day it's something, but these folks who work hard wants to go back. And when you talk to the people in Haiti, there is no hope. And when you create, because of the policies that have been created by the US for years and years, you come up with something. If Haiti is not a failed state, they don't want to classify it as I don't know what else is. So I did wanted to point that out. If you do have policies as indicated by Ambassador Ward, jobs, and I know the Philip Brown mentioned in terms of education, you have something that everybody, the community, is looking forward to. Their schools, this insecurity stop. I usually go back to Haiti every other week. I don't know, I mean, how long since I've been back to Haiti. So that's the reality of failed policies and when Haitian are not being part of the solution.
Thank you. Is Mr. Gibbs unmuted now? Go ahead, Mr. Gibbs. Okay. Moving right along. There is a person on the chat, and I'd like to, I actually had this question for Reverend Constant. It's part and parcel, it's almost the same, but it was, what must Haitians be doing in mapping a plan for the future of Haiti? And that's really a vision question, and it's probably a little too early, but can you attack that for me, please? The actual question on the chat was, could the panelists offer some specific examples of what people in the diaspora can do both inside and outside the faith community, which is similar, but not exactly the same, but yeah.
Thank you, Attorney Law. We must claim the vision. We must claim the vision of a better Haiti for all Haitians. And again, it can be in collaboration with Haitians or Haitian brothers and sisters living in Haiti and all Haitian brothers living in the diaspora. It can happen. No one must be left behind as we think about a vision for a better Haiti for all Haitians. All sectors of Haitian society must come together and realize that we need to raise our people. We need to raise our people. We need to lift the poor from their condition. And there's plenty of people living in poverty in Haiti. And when we focus on raising our people, as we have been doing through the Haiti MICA project at a very micro level, but that has been my experience as a Haitian living in the diaspora, that if the focus is on raising a people, especially the poorest of the poor, if the focus is on changing their condition both as individuals and as families, then we will build the infrastructure to make their lives better. So in the process of raising up people, you have no choice but to build the infrastructure to make their lives better. And so how do we move forward after discerning the vision? And yes, we do need the help, not just, we need the help of all who want to help Haiti, of all, because we cannot do this in isolation. But we must become united first in purpose, as it has been said. And so a Haiti where all Haitians will have access to the necessities of life, as the ambassadors mentioned, food, clean drinking water, healthcare, free education for all Haitians of all ages, employment, safety and security. What do Haitians need? What we all need: opportunity for economic independence. This provides Haitians with the chance to house and feed themselves and their children, and they will want to stay in Haiti. We can't emphasize enough the importance of education. And again, here I must say in parentheses, is that it is because education is so important that it feels whenever someone is protesting something in Haiti, the schools are the ones that they seek out to close down. As we have seen this past week, where Haiti basically shut down and children were not able to go to school. And so there's this fear that if we are educated and if we grab a hold of God's vision for Haiti, things will happen. We can change Haiti. And so I know for a fact that Haitians want to send their children to school, not only to graduate high school and sit around not doing anything, because again, there's not enough space for them to go to the universities in Haiti, but we need to build the infrastructure once they graduate high school that they can learn a trade, that they can learn a profession, that they can go to the university and build their nation. Education must be readily available to all children and young people. And employment. Once they are done, again, that's part of building the infrastructure in raising up people. They must be able to find something to do to earn a living. An opportunity to be creative and productive. We must create opportunities for us to be creative and to be productive. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that passionate response. At this time, I'd like to announce that this is our C-PAC annual luncheon, and we're having our membership drive. I was looking on the chat and I saw where people were saying that they would join. Do go ahead. We would love to have you join us doing the kind of work that you see us doing right now. At this time, there's another person who has their hands raised and would like to be unmuted, Mr. Andrew Sharp. Can we have your question, please?
Thank you so much. All protocol observed. Great discussion with regards to Haiti. My question is for all the panelists. We see the policies intact between the US and Caribbean government, and many policies have been shaped. We see that this administration is approach, especially when Vice President Harris went to Mexico, she spoke about how, and President Biden spoke about how to improve each country social economic platform, provide support and funding for programs and those stuff. Mr. Constant, you spoke about how important it is to support communities. So my question is, how do you see more funding being channeled in that direction in terms of supporting on-the-ground community organization to improve education and infrastructure? And last but least, part of the support from the US government is to see how we can put in a mechanism like here in the United States. We have organizations and groups that groom political persons from a city council level right up to a state representative. So how do we see the US can support that for Haiti? Because we need that kind of a system to work from within. Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Disson.
Sure. I think specifically a couple of folks asked specifically what can be done. And I think the Reverend eloquently mentioned some of those. But right now, we must get the country secured. So security is first. And after security, so number one would be security. And that Haitian cannot do that alone, no matter who you talk to. Now, the discussion within the community is, they have eloquently put occupation with temporary assistant, which we need to get it regardless. We need to be very clear. No one wants Haiti to be occupied again by the US, but we do need help with the security, look with the kidnapping. It just needs to stop because that's what's taking over the country. Second, this constitution question that's been, we know the president, the former president who got killed was very involved in, which was an element of it. That question needs to be resolved because I do think as part of the Constitution, remember 1934, the US caused the changing of that, and a lot of Black leaders at that time were the NAACP took the lead on criticizing the US and other Black leaders at the time. We need to make sure that that kind of handled, because that may, based on how that comes out, you may have a decent number three, which is the election. And then that's a free and fair, which is where the US could come and play a role to make sure, and I saw Ambassador mentioned it, and both ambassadors, Joseph and Ward, in terms of a free and fair election to make sure that it's done properly and that the UN can help. So these three items, but in the middle of these three items, security, the Constitution question has to be answered, and then the election piece. There's different time frame going around. I'm not an expert on the time frame, what needs to happen, but at the core of these is what's happening right now, part of the crisis in Haiti. And I'm not speaking about the horrible kidnapping, but these folks, political parties, the civil society, and the different accords that cannot come together to form a government. Because the Constitution we have did not provide this constitutional crisis that we are in, which kind of lay us where we are right now. There's no government. There's only 10 elected senators in the country. And as part of that, there's no roadmap and there's no safeguard in the old Constitution. So that's why you have to address the constitutional question before you go into an election of any free and fair election. But because of no, I guess, consensus, if that's the right word, of the different accords. There's three main accords, and there's two groups as part of the main accord that you cannot, as you're looking at the three biggest accord, you cannot disregard the two main groups, which is part of the 10 senators who are duly elected. They have to be part of the conversation. And then the other groups which made up a lot of the former state assembly folks and some of the senators that make up this group. So we need to have all of these people sit together and really come out with if it's a peace treaty, come out with a consensus and form a government, a transition government that would lead all of these 1, 2, 3, as we talked about. And that needs to happen within the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Okay, great. There was someone who asked a question, and I think we had touched on it or answered it, about how do the Caribbean nations deal with Haitians who would be applying for asylum? Does that happen? I mean, how is that done? Can any of the ambassadors address that?
Ambassador Fairbrother, would you like to?
Even
go
know,
ahead?
Okay.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, so Haiti is part of CARICOM. We in St. Kitts and Nevis have had a strong Haitian community forever. I don't know about the other countries, but they are part of CARICOM, and so they do come to the countries. But as Ambassador pointed out, most people look north, unfortunately, and I believe the time has come for us to look within ourselves and not just as a people, because including Africa. So when we see solutions, we must just, the people of African descent must look at solutions that embrace all of us. I don't think, we don't turn Haitians away, but as Ambassador said, they tend to look north. But one of the things, and someone mentioned how CARICOM can help, and I agree with Ambassador that advocacy is important, and that's why I spoke about understanding the history and pushing it and education about it. There are other issues that we can push for, and the developments, and I commend Vice President Harris for the development issues in the Latin America, and I hope it spreads to the Caribbean, because one of the things that plagues us as a region of the Americas is crime. And the thing is, and you know, we hear a lot about that in Haiti at this time. The thing is that they are fundamental, and as a physician, if you have an abscess, for example, if you just stick a needle in and pull out the pus, it never heals. You have to incise it, cut horizontally and vertically, let all that out. And so I believe in going back, always go back to root issues. In the Caribbean, we don't make these guns. And we hardly make these drugs except we plant some marijuana. So, but we are caught in the middle as transshipment points between the North and the South. The appetite in the North for drugs, and the production in the South, and for guns, vice versa. And we have, since the late 1990s, the health ministers of the Americas declared crime, including gun violence, a public health issue. And it has not been addressed as such, because as Ambassador said, these social issues are important. In the late 1990s, Kaiser Permanente, they did some studies, and what they found, that children exposed early in life to these, what you call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, including abuse, domestic abuse, violence in the family, mental illness, persons, family members imprisoned, poverty exacerbate all these things. All these toxic issues, if children early on in life are exposed to those, the brains do not develop properly, and they always forever make bad decisions socially. And so, as Reverend Constance said and Ambassador said, we have to provide the environment. So first, we must determine which children are the most vulnerable and intervene to provide safe environment. But these things, unfortunately, and this is about development. If you're going to build and develop a nation, you must develop strong, healthy, resilient, focused children who have food to eat, a place to sleep, and a secure place to reside. Free of this toxic stress. So we must get back to these root issues. And the thing is though, politicians, and yes, we mentioned some of the near term, we must have immediate, but we must always have these long-term plans. But when we look in election cycle to election cycle, it's difficult to focus on these. So I commend the Vice President for looking at these fundamental social issues, but we can advocate for them also to be brought to the CARICOM, to the Caribbean, to all of us, and to the Black and Brown communities right here in the United States. Because these issues also operate here, and COVID brought that out. Black and brown were more vulnerable. They were on the front lines. They didn't have as much access to education. So right here, there are issues to be dealt with in our communities. But we need help, but we must come and find the strength to find our own solutions and work to provide what they call BCEs, or benevolent childhood experiences, to these adverse toxic stress that is damaging our children, and by these children coming out, because they were not destined for that, as Reverend said. They were not created for that. But we want children who are going to walk in destiny and walk in purpose for which they were created. And for that, we must look long-term. We must be committed to those long-term solutions to raise children all over the region, not just in Haiti, all over, who are safe and secure, well-educated, and well-fed. And that must be our long-term commitment.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Gibbs, did you have anything to say, Ambassador Ward?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I totally agree with what I've heard so far. And I think no one will deny that when it comes to humanitarian assistance, the United States is unequal. And that's fantastic, that's great. But when it comes to long-term or medium-term development, the US never keep its eye on the ball unless they can manipulate the political leaders and bend them to US will. Each administration have their own interests, but they all have the same interest as number one, and that is the US interest. And sometimes they are very myopic in how they view US interests, because a secure and prosperous Haiti is in US national security interests. Dr. Alex, I know your group has presented to the White House, and I imagine the Department of Homeland Security, a list of initiatives that you would like to see. And I think it would be quite useful because I noticed on the chat, people are asking questions. What can they do? I've even seen on the chat where someone asked, how can they contribute? So I think it's important. I would like to hear some more of that from your side. But I just want to say this, and what C-PAC is trying to do with this webinar is to begin a process of advocacy for Haiti across the Caribbean diaspora. And I know when the chair asked the question recently, and Reverend Constant responded, Reverend Constant spoke eloquently about the Haitian diaspora. But I think it's incumbent on the entire Caribbean diaspora to step up to the plate and understand that Haiti is a part of the Caribbean family. Yeah. And whatever happens to Haitian immigrants affects all of us.
Yes.
We are all immigrants in this country. What happens to any immigrant is a problem. It's a concern for us. And when you add racism to your policy, it affects us all from the Caribbean. So I would like to ask Caribbean diaspora across the United States, wherever you are, is to reach out to your local elected officials, reach out to your senators, reach out to your congressional representatives, and make the case for Haiti. And I think, Dr. Alex, you can help to educate the diaspora, not just the Haitian diaspora, but the entire Caribbean diaspora. So we will be equipped to understand what are the priorities for Haiti, what are the priorities for the Haitian diaspora, and how we, in the rest of the Caribbean diaspora, can assist.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Ward. And again, thank you to C-PAC for giving us an opportunity to speak. And I think Reverend Constant and myself being of Haitian descent, we want to say thank you to all of the panelists. And you are absolutely correct. I do have a meeting with the White House next week. They did acknowledge they received the letter, which is progress, you said. But I think what we can do is advocate. And you stated, advocate for these changes, because these changes change because of policy and because of folks we put in office. Our organization is an organization of all politicians, of all elected officials. We have currently 80 elected officials all across the country in 17 states, including where the headquarters of C-PAC is DC, where we have 2 elected officials there. But we cannot do this alone without our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. So there is a 13 ask we did send. And the first thing that the number one thing on that list is get humanitarian parole for all of them, because that will resolve. I don't think we would be here if that was the strike of a pen that happened. And we don't know why that did not happen. And that's something that we will continue to advocate for. But we need help. We need help to amplify our voices. We can't do it alone. And I think at the beginning of the conversation, someone said the outrage. We are in the age of social media. So you won't see the mass rallies when you see folks on the street. Now people taking it to Twitter, to Instagram, to Facebook, and do what they do. And the White House do take notes of these things when you mobilize. So I do ask folks to share these different organizations like C-PAC, like our organization Neon. Neon, we go on our social media link, share the 13 points, go on our website, neon.org. And I'll drop it in the chat. You could take action. Tweet 13 for Haiti. Those are the 13 points. We asked the White House. Eventually, we will get a meeting with the folks who are in, and that meeting is requested with either the president or the president or the vice president, because we have met with all of the senior levels. So those are the things that folks could help us, because we cannot do this alone as a community. And strength in numbers. Trust me, if they see all of us together, they start taking notes, because all of us, they cannot go against all of us, but they do look at the little weak countries that they can do what they do. But so when one of us is in the battle, it should be all of us. And that's why I want to thank C-PAC for taking this initiative. Thank you, Ambassador Ward.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to Mr. Gibb again. Mr. Gibbs, ask your question, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry about the delays on the early attempts. I am looking at the website of CARICOM right now, and I see that Haiti is a member of CARICOM, and it is astounding to me that I am not yet aware of a greater effort by the CARICOM countries to assist in addressing the challenges in Haiti, even should they make a collective approach at the United Nations. As the panelists have spoken this evening, there seems to be a great focus, as was reiterated a few times, on focusing north for assistance. And that I think is not the ultimate solution. North does have a contribution to make, but it will not solve the Haitian problems. I am from Turks and Caicos, just 90 miles south of Haiti. And in my entire lifetime, we have had continuous relationships with Haitians. And even now we are, if I would use this word, being inundated by boatloads of Haitians fleeing Haiti. Turks and Caicos does not have the capacity to absorb it, but it does its best. There is a large Haitian community in Turks and Caicos, and right next door in the Bahamas. Bahamas is experiencing similar boatloads of Haitians on a regular basis. As we look north, it seems to me that there is the missing link. Well, there are two great missing links in my estimation: the involvement of CARICOM countries and the building of capacity within Haiti to absorb and properly distribute any assistance that may come to Haiti.
Okay, can you frame a question then?
Okay, my question is, how does this panelist view the involvement of Caribbean countries and Haitians in the diaspora? How do they see their roles in facilitating the capacity of Haiti to absorb the needed help that it so desperately needs?
Thank you.
Can I say briefly, yes, CARICOM has been involved, and well, I am not going in depth in it because, as I said, in fact, we in St. Kitts Nevis is the only CARICOM country right now that has the role of ambassador bifurcated. I'm the bilateral ambassador. That means I'm the ambassador to the US and not to the OAS. Most of the other countries have one ambassador for both. And it so happens that the Haitian matter has been discussed mostly at the OAS level, and all the Latin American, Caribbean countries are, the US and Canada, and also at the UN level. So they have been in discussions, and among themselves, they have been at the forefront of the problem. You may not hear that, but they have been agitating and advocating for Haiti and will continue so to do. I believe that I believe there are other things we can do, and Ambassador pointed out that we are all cash-strapped and all have employment issues. But I think there are some things we can do with suggestions in terms of exchanges, embedding of teachers of French and Spanish. The other thing is Haiti has an entirely different education system to the rest of CARICOM. And that's one issue. But there are some things we can do in teacher exchanges, especially teachers who teach French and English, in terms also of technical vocation and perhaps hospitalities. There's some things we are looking at that possibly could take place down the road. But I would say the Haitian diaspora, yes, has a big role to play, because the diaspora is not just about remittances, it's also about sharing education. And I'd be interested to know from the Haitians whether there is online learning and whether the diaspora is involved in teaching back home, because now you can do online learning. So if they are involved in education sharing, and that is something the entire Caribbean diaspora perhaps can get involved in, education of the Haitian population through online learning. I don't know how feasible that is. I don't know.
Could you address that? Because I do know that you have vocational school and things of that nature.
Yes, no, thank you. Haiti is a nation where all the systems require major intervention, all the systems. The education system, the healthcare, you name it, all the systems require major intervention. And so even the idea of online education, electricity is always an issue for us in Haiti. Right now, as we speak, so many of the institutions in Haiti rely on generators to do anything because of the lack of electricity. And so the idea of online education is a wonderful idea, and it would serve us well, especially those of us, because again, when you think of the Haitian talent that is outside of Haiti, Haiti has one of its best investments in those of us living outside of Haiti. Somehow, we must come together. Somehow we must allow each other the space to be able to come to the table. I'm not naive enough to say that it's gonna be an easy process, but we are at a point right now where we have been looking north for so many years, and see where we are today. See where we are today. Ambassador Philip Brown, you're right. We don't produce the weapons that we have in Haiti right now, killing Haitians. We don't produce them. Where do they come from? And so we as Haitians must find a way to come together and become agents of our own destiny. Otherwise, the cycle will continue. Just as we are starting to make progress, another natural disaster will happen. And because we didn't build the infrastructure to respond to it, we are back to ground zero. And so we are a nation that requires major interventions. And so Haitians must come together and adopt a model of governing that includes all sectors of society. Again, I have seen it done in the work that I've been doing in Haiti. The work that I've been doing in Haiti through the Haiti MICA project, it started in Haiti. The vision started in Haiti. And they had the vision of Haitians lifting the poorest of the poor, children and young people out of poverty. And we have managed together, Haitians living in Haiti and those of us living here in the United States, together we have lifted hundreds of poor children out of poverty, providing them with education, providing them with vocational training. It can be done. I can testify that it can be done.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a Charlie Bennett who'd like to ask a question rather. Charlie Bennett. Go ahead, please. I think we're having some real issues. Ms. Bennett? Okay, well, while she's doing it, I saw on the chat as well, there was a question or a comment rather, that many members of the medical profession find Title 42 abhorrent and an abhorrent violation of human rights, and wanted to know what they could do in order to join with people to make a change. You're doing it right now. We want you to join C-PAC. We're one of the change agents, but also Dr. Desolme, you can speak to that.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think I wrote something privately to Ms. Robin Bernstein. The US knows exactly that this is inhumane. They know this is not right. I mean, they know it. What we saw in Del Rio and the way it was being treated, they knew that they had to change that image. They know that. However, it's a political climate. The immigration is not a popular issue. So as a result of that, I don't think they really too much, I want to use the word careful, care. If professionals, folks like expert really care about what they do. Because if the polling had it where it was showing that this was a bad thing, every single person that was under this bridge would have been here in the US. So that's the bottom line. And there's a correlation to what we started. Everything is guided by polls. And the polling this is not immigration, especially with Black migrant. It's not a top of the issue for a lot of the sector votes, if you may call it. So people know deep down in their heart, this is not right. Little children, their mothers and fathers been, died because of the 4,000-mile trees have been saving for months and years to get here. And a country, they left Haiti some of them left Haiti for decades, have nothing in Haiti. Some of them was not even born in Haiti, born in Africa and different parts of the world, but because they are Black, they were dropped in Haiti with giving a $200 gift card and a phone and say goodbye. That's the treatment. And that's because the outrage, is the outrage. I think we are outraged, but I think the world, when it comes to polling, is not that outrage. And if they were, the polling, the numbers would have been different, and you would have seen different members of Congress. You would have seen different things about the administration. So that's the real issue here. And that's why I applaud the courage of C-PAC for doing what needs to be done, because this is wrong. It's inhumane, because they are breaking their own laws. They know what they're doing is illegal. And they're doing it because the polling shows that, hey, it doesn't really hurt if we do this type of things. So that's the real truth.
Okay, thank you so much. We are at this time would like to ask folks to raise their hands if they want to ask a question. Any takers? Okay, there's a question here from an Elaine Knight. Which body will be responsible for initiating these key priorities for Haiti, and also suggested timeframes for these priorities? Mr. DeSalmi, can you answer that?
Yes, it would be, again, sadly, it would be the the folks on the ground, the groups that we talked about who are trying to work out the solution, the different accords. They've asked for support in terms of stay out. And good luck to that, meaning that the US, they want it to be a Haitian-led solution. They want folks who are in Haiti to do this with the help of the diaspora. And we have, as a political organization, have made it, we there if our help is needed, but we are not living in Haiti. We understand we are American, we are elected here, but we are ready for support, whatever that we could facilitate in terms of what's happening. The timeline, the US again, sadly have said they want election by 2023. So that means that the government must form, the Constitution, if, I guess, I don't know what the US policy would be on there. So I think people kind of see where this is going. That's what's happening. So the US said by 2023, they want free and fair election. They would like to have the election. But so the transition government would need to come in, and you need to have something that is so broad, where there's consensus, where the opposition does not feel that it's being left out. And that's the real question when you talk about the what's happening in Haiti on the ground. And the US doesn't really want to play a role, because the Haitian folks have said they want it to be Haitian-led. But obviously we need the help of the US with the security piece. But in terms of forming the government, once the government is formed, and that could be within the next couple of days, or that could be in the next couple of weeks. I hope it's not within months, because what's happening, the gas prices, the school, Reverend Constant mentioned it, and different folks on the panelists, has crippled the country. So a solution of consensus between the current Prime Minister accord and the different groups, the opposition needs to come together. But the US has made it very clear election needs to happen within 2023, because they are supporting election. We don't have money, and as well as the international community. So we don't have money to do our own election. So we got to go by timeline of whoever's giving the money, who hold the purse says that it needs to happen. And I do think it's a decent timeline. If you ask for my personal opinion. But I'm not an expert in terms of if a transition government, if these things, because it's going to be a whole new issue with the Constitution itself. Remember, you got a president who almost got assassinated in terms of that. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We have the last question I'm going to field is by Stacy Green, who had her hand up. Stacy. Your question? Could you unmute, please? Okay.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Eric Dooley. Before I ask the question, I would like to say that there's no denying that Haiti needs help. But before everything, Haiti did not came to be solely on foreign help. Haiti came to be because the people were tired back in 1803 and 1804 So I think my question would be, how can CPAC help facilitate diasporas to get jobs and get into powerful position in Haiti? Because I believe Haitian and the diasporas are better suited to take on certain positions in Haitian government, because I believe they can make the decisions that needs to be made and take on the challenges better, as opposed to what's going on in Haiti right now.
So what is your question again? Repeat it up. I'm sorry.
My question would be, how can I'm sorry, my question would be, how can CPAC help facilitate Haitian diasporas to get into a powerful position in Haiti? Because I believe they are the ones that can make the decisions that needs to be made to help the Haitian people.
Okay. Would you like to venture a response, Ambassador Ward, as a member of the advisory board for C-PAC?
How can C-PAC help?
Yes.
Well, first of all, C-PAC is trying to mobilize members of the Caribbean diaspora to assist Haiti in those critical areas that we have the capacity to assist in. One, we must be able to assist the work that Dr. De Sulme and his group is doing. Secondly, we are advocating in the DMV area to begin with, but as I said earlier, across the United States, that members of the Caribbean diaspora, Caribbean groups scattered all over the United States, to advocate to their elected officials to meet the immediate and long-term needs of Haiti. And I have enumerated some of those, and other panelists have talked about them. So there are things that C-PAC will continue to do, but C-PAC cannot do this on its own. C-PAC is trying to mobilize the entire Caribbean diaspora and support what Dr. De Sulme and his group of elected Haitians who are elected officials in this country. We also have Caribbean elected officials, and we must talk to them. We must ask them to step up, but not just the Caribbean elected officials. We must talk to our congressional representatives. We must call their offices, write them letters, go to their town hall meetings, and advocate for the US government to change its policy to Haiti from a humanitarian policy to one of economic development without micromanaging Haitian civic groups and government. Dr. De Sulme has outlined some immediate measures that need to happen in Haiti. There was someone who asked earlier, how can CARICOM help Haiti? CARICOM can help with institution building. Ambassador Philip Brown spoke of areas where CARICOM can help and where CARICOM is offering help. But as I mentioned earlier, and some people may have missed that, is that Haiti often spurn offers of assistance from CARICOM and look to the United States and Canada, and even to the nemesis of Haiti, France, rather than look to the region for the region to help solve Haiti's problems. Why? Because the region is seen as not having the financial resources. But if Haiti says, if Haitian leaders said, look, US government, look, Canadian government, look, French government, there are expertise and governments in the Caribbean that can help Haiti and are best situated to help Haiti. Why not empower those governments? Why not empower those organizations in the Caribbean and also in the diaspora who can provide the kind of assistance rather than the top-down approach from the so-called core group of governments, the US, Canada, and France?
Thank you. Thank you.
Ambassador Lowe, I just would like to clarify something from the question, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Attorney Lowe?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think it's the issue that, that we can do a better job in terms of leading the institutions in Haiti than the Haitians living in Haiti. I would disagree with that based on my experience, based on what I know about Haitians in Haiti. They have the capacity to lead their nations. They have the capacity to lead the institution. The challenge becomes the folks who are qualified to lead our institutions in Haiti. They don't feel safe to participate in whether it's in government. They don't feel safe to participate in other aspects of life in Haiti. And so my prayer is that once we establish the rule of law, and Haitians living in Haiti who are qualified to lead Haiti will feel safe enough, to participate in leading their country. Yes, we in the diaspora, we can bring our talent to Haiti, providing we are invited, providing we are allowed to, because we do have talent in the diaspora. We must be allowed to participate, but I must make the claim that we do have talent in Haiti, but they must feel safe enough to participate and to lead.
Okay, and that will be the last comment. This has been a really informative and well done forum. I want to thank all the participants. Before I go though, I want to read one of the things on the chat that I saw, and I think it is instructive. People should join C-PAC to make it a more powerful and effective body. Anything you want out of C-PAC can be accomplished as C-PAC becomes stronger and more representative of the Caribbeans in the diaspora. And so I want to thank all of the panelists, each of you. I want to thank you for a really robust discussion. I'm sure that the listening audience really learned a lot. And we at C-PAC, you know, a lot of times we have these forums and we have these discussions and then nothing is done. But we at C-PAC has decided as an organization to lobby our local governments to make our cities and counties a safe haven for Haitians. We have a petition that is going around and we urge you all to join in this petition because, you know, we want to do something concrete. We want to do something that will inure to the benefit of the folks who are in our region, who are Haitians at this critical juncture. And so I want to thank all of you. It has been a wonderful event, and I look forward to us having many, many more. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Madam Moderator. Thanks to all the panelists. It was great to participate with you.
Thank you very much.
And thanks to C-PAC. It's a start of good things to come. And all our blessings on the people of Haiti.
Okay.
Yes.
I was rather liking the ambassador title. I'm just kidding.
We are all ambassadors, and everyone will tell you, I suppose, that we are firstly ambassadors for Christ, and then we're all ambassadors. We're all ambassadors.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you.
On behalf of C-PAC, we thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.